You're listening to WPVM LP Asheville 103.7, globally at WPVMFM.org. And this is the Home Business Success Show. Greetings and welcome to the Home Business Success Show. I'm your host, Hank Eater, also known as Hank the PR Guy. Folks who run home businesses have some great advantages over brick and mortar businesses. They also face unique challenges. As we speak with home business entrepreneurs on the show each week, we'll gain valuable insights on how to balance business and life and to share best practices for people who run home businesses. Our first guest today is Kristen Stover, owner of Moxie Administrative Services. A self-proclaimed career secretary, Kristen began working as a mobile administrator in 2015, helping just a few small businesses and solopreneurs with their administrative tasks. In 2018, Moxie Administrative Services was officially formed. Once COVID-19 arrived and shut down the mobile aspect of the business, Moxie became mostly virtual and hasn't stopped since. With experiences in many different industries, from insurance to retail, medical to legal, Moxie Administrative Services now has several virtual assistants on call to help small businesses handle their various back office tasks. Welcome to the show, Kristen.
Thanks, Hank. Nice to be here.
How did the idea of a mobile administrative services business come to you?
It was an interesting turn of events. I was at school. I went back to school to AB Tech for medical office administration because I thought that was a direction I wanted to go. And I was at a scholarship luncheon, and the speaker there was the owner of a virtual assistant company. And she's since become my mentor and my friend, but she was talking about how her business got started, and it just got me thinking, wouldn't it be really cool to be able to go in person? Because I think that there's probably some tasks that can't be done virtually. So that's where the idea was born. And when the universe decided that I needed to go out on my own, that's what I started to do. So,
yeah. What are some of those tasks that you were thinking in the beginning you couldn't do virtually?
Well, it's hard to handle paper virtually.
Okay, that's that's fair enough.
Right. So that's probably the main one that I had visions. I've been in enough home offices to know that usually there's at least one or two piles of paper that just need to be dealt with. And so that's where I thought I might be useful.
Very good. You know, I like the name Moxie Administrative Services. Where did that come from?
Well, Moxie came from my graphic designer. My sister's best friend is my graphic designer. We've known each other for 30, 40 years, something like that. And she created my logo, and she's the one that came up with Moxie. And when I looked up the definition of determination and know-how and pep, and it just seemed to embody who I was, who I wanted to be, the what you would need from an administrative assistant, and it just kind of fit. And now people are actually calling me Moxie out and about when they see me, so it's kind of fun.
That must be funny to have somebody go, hey, Moxie.
Yeah, like I can think of worse things to be called.
Oh, definitely. And it's making me think of Jimi Hendrix now, Moxie Lady.
Oh, yeah. I love it.
Your bio said that you have experience in many different industries. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, I started back when I was in college many, many years ago. It's kind of as a part-time after school secretary in commercial lines insurance. Commercial lines insurance. You know, there's commercial and real estate. I've done that too. So that it started with that. and went into hospitality. I've been with government contracting firms in the law department. I've worked in the finance industry. I worked for Visa USA and financial planners, food service, sales, medical office, you name it. And now I have Moxettes who also have experiences that I don't. So they bring extra value to the table.
That's cool that they're the Moxettes.
Moxettes. If I ever get a guy on the team, he's going to be a Moxer.
Moxer, that makes sense. I don't know too many guys who would want to be called a Moxette. Well, what usually prompts a business to contact you?
I guess I would summarize it in one word: is overwhelm. So many businesses are doing everything for themselves. They're trying to keep all the balls in the air and keep all the plates spinning. And it gets overwhelming, and they hit this wall of exhaustion and overwhelm and just not knowing what to do next. And so that's usually where my clients are when they come to me.
Because they're wearing all the hats at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
They're the CEO, the CFO, they're the
salesperson, everything.
All of those things, especially for the home-based business people. Now, would you say that your experience having been in all of those different places and all of those different types of businesses has given you more of an overview to be able to just come into most businesses and know what's going on with them?
Oh, absolutely. I know a lot. I know a little about a lot, kind of across the board. But when it comes down to it, as far as Moxie's concerned, like the skills are the same across the board. So you need to know how to, the phone and the typing and the basic skills, and then the additional experience of adding the softwares and the apps and the different things to organize the people. It's the same. It just gets tweaked depending on the industry. So.
Do you make phone calls on behalf of your clients?
I do. Yeah. In fact, I did yesterday for a client that needed to transfer or file a non-resident insurance license in another state. And so I made the call.
That's very good. Yeah, so that's just one thing that somebody could get off their plate.
Exactly.
What are the kinds of services that you provide to your clients?
I would say probably the thing that I get most often is bookkeeping. That's while I am not a bookkeeper per se, I do understand the basics, and I am capable of categorizing and then inputting receipts and that sort of thing, making sure it's going in the right place so that when it goes to the bookkeeper or the CPA, they know, they can compile all the information. The next thing is social media. People will ask me to post on social media. And again, while that's not my specialty, if you kind of give me a little bit of guidance, I can put it up there on your behalf. But if you're looking for somebody to do analytics and that sort of thing, there are people that are better than I. And then I've done everything from creating some graphics through Canva to blog writing and newsletters and special projects. I've typed books. I have helped set up workflow. I have done mailings, you name it. It's kind of, every day is different, which is one of the reasons I love this.
Yeah, I would think that it would be very hard to get bored in a position like yours.
Yes. So if you're looking for routine, this is not the job for you.
There you go. Well, mine is kind of like that. And when you mention newsletters and emails, those are some of the things that I do. So maybe we kind of cross, well, let's say we share what it is that we do. And I'm a great believer in this new paradigm. The world is changing. And I think that it's changing for the better. And in the past, where people would always look at each other with suspicion and say, we are competitors and try to hide things from each other, I think we're opening into a more open and honest kind of way of doing things where we all can complement each other and don't have to look at each other as being the competition.
Absolutely. And, the blog writing and the newsletters, the voice that I write in, tends to be a little more light and chipper and perky, and not everybody needs that. Not everybody wants that. And so there are other people that do the more serious and, you know, the different voices better than I do. So, you know, there's more than enough to go around.
I do like that when I get to take on that kind of a persona for clients because it's fun.
Yeah, it is fun. Yeah.
Yes, it is. How would you say that the advent of COVID changed the way that you do business?
Well, it's been a learning experience for sure. My in-person clients we had to shut down and start figuring out how to work together virtually. And so we started with, you know, doing phone calls and figuring out what I could help with. I do have a retail client, and so I could still do postings for her, but my hours did get reduced because, you know, there's paper that I can't touch. So I can't go there to touch paper. But silver lining here is that with all the Zoom events and networking, I have been receiving calls for virtual work from new clients, and you know, they're coming in from other companies, other areas, other states, which is so much fun. And what I found it turns out to be, so a lot of these companies would say, when I have time, if I ever have time to sit at my desk, I'm going to get X, Y, and Z done. And then my phone started ringing, and it turns out that it wasn't a time issue. It was more of I just don't want to, or I'm not very good at it. So that's why they called in the reinforcements.
So then being able to switch over from a mobile business to a virtual business, it might have closed a few doors, but it opened some other doors, and probably not the least of which is, as you mentioned, the notion of having clients from out of state. And I've got some of those myself. I've got clients in the Pacific Northwest, for example, that some of whom I've never even met in person. I've got clients in Mobile, Alabama that I've never met in person. And it's a beautiful interconnected world now. And because of the technology that we've got to be able to do this, I suppose if this happened 20 years ago, it would have shut things down more than it shut them down now.
For sure, for sure. It really has been a silver lining to all of this. It's been a blessing to be able to meet people that I would not have met otherwise. And it's been fun in spite of all the craziness and the COVID.
Yes, yes.
Our silver lining.
Well, since you've gone virtual, what have you learned personally about running a home-based business?
Oh my goodness. Probably the biggest lesson that I learned is how to schedule my time. When we first started, I started the business in general, and then when we shut down, I found that I was working long hours from 8 in the morning, and often find myself at my desk at 10 o'clock at night and still be working, and just go to fall into bed and get up and do it all over again. So now I've discovered that it's okay to stop work at a certain time at a reasonable hour and allow myself time to recharge. And the other thing that I learned was how important communicating with my clients is on an ongoing basis, and especially when the things that we've agreed on, or the scope of work, the things that we've agreed that I will do, it kind of starts pushing the boundaries of that a little bit, and it starts going outside of what we originally agreed. And the last thing I want to do is let my clients down. And when it starts going outside those boundaries, it often, I find myself in that place of feeling like I'm going to let them down. So communicating with my clients.
So communicating in that case, if the work is going outside the scope of the original estimates, it involves renegotiation, I suppose, of what's going to be expected, and I suppose other aspects of it.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
You mentioned setting the boundaries of what your hours are, and I think that's very important, because I have found myself in that position before, where get up first thing in the morning and there's things that are on your mind that you really know you have to do. When it sometimes for me it keeps me from sleeping past the crack of dawn, and then at night thinking, well, I should be doing this, but then you have to draw that line and say tomorrow will come and
Yeah.
this will be here, and then set the boundaries with the clients and tell them, okay, it really isn't okay for you to call me at 9:30 at night because those are not normal working hours, so we have to set
Yeah.
normal working hours.
Well, I'm fortunate. It's a rare occurrence when a client will call me at night. But I do get texts over the weekends and the evenings, and I just have learned not to respond, and it will still be there waiting for me in the morning. Surprise.
There you go. That's one way to do it. And also, I think sometimes with home businesses, and tell me if this has happened to you, there has to be boundaries set sometimes with family members because these are the working hours. And, how do you separate home life from business life is a particular problem of the home business entrepreneur.
Absolutely. Well, it's, yeah, complaints about mom, you're always at your desk. Is a thing. It's a common occurrence. And so I've really tried to make sure that I am available. But then on the flip side, it also makes me more aware that I have to be working during working hours, because, I would recognize that, oh gosh, I'm going to be working late tonight, so I can go for a hike in the middle of the day. Some days I actually do that, which is one of the benefits of working for yourself.
There is that. Would you say that home-based businesses use different services than any brick and mortar companies that might hire you?
You know what? I don't think so. They're pretty much the same. As I mentioned before, the skill set is the same across the board. It just kind of depends on the business. I actually only have one brick and mortar client right now, but that is a virtual contract that I have with them. So it really is, the tasks kind of carry across the board. The only difference is if I go in person, I'm probably handling paper.
Okay. I guess they haven't called you to do that up to this point in time.
I had one client and I went masked and sanitized, and we kept our distance and we got it done, and it was fun.
Yeah, I guess that possibility still exists. There are safe ways of doing person-to-person business in this day and age.
Yes, it just takes a little more mindfulness. I think everybody's still a little skittery about, it feels like I'm being rude if I don't hug you. So we just have to acknowledge that that's just going to be a thing for a while.
Yeah, there's that old elbow bump that's going on right now. Well, you're listening to WPVM LP Asheville 103.7, globally at WPVMFM.org. And this is the Home Business Success Show. I'm your host, Hank Eder. My guest in this segment is Kristen Stover of Moxie Administrative Services. Kristen, does a business need to be a certain size before they start needing administrative services?
Oh, yes, they need to be at least one person. So, I found that generally the person that's working at home is by themselves, and as you mentioned, they are being CEO, they are CFO, they are wearing all those hats, and they're also doing the administrative and sales, and then they, on top of that, they have to do the things that they're in business to do. So what your service you're providing, or what you're making and selling, that has to be done too. So one person is all.
That makes sense. What would you say is a very common mistake that home business people make?
As I just said, mentioned, when you're wearing all the hats. So thinking that you can do it all, efficiently and well and still make the money and do the things that you need to be doing to make the money, that can be, I think that's a mistake, to know where your strengths are, what you can do, what you can do well, and then there's some things that maybe somebody else can do quicker and better, and that's a great indicator to outsource.
I guess it's a juggling act, because for some home business owners, the notion that they might have to pay somebody to do something maybe in the beginning seems a little scary. But if they could be using their time more efficiently, for example, whatever their hourly rate is for what they do, or their project rate, maybe their project or their hourly rate is pretty significant depending on what kind of service they offer, then it makes more sense for them to take on administrative services to do the things that they either don't really want to do or don't like to do, or spending those hours away from what's really profitable for them is not quite as efficient as just getting somebody to do that.
Exactly. It's the equivalent of being in more than one place at a time.
Mm-hmm. And it brings me to the next question. What are some of the advantages to outsourcing administrative services rather than just hiring someone?
Well, I think that it actually ends up being less expensive, even though the hourly rate might seem larger than you would expect. But if you're hiring somebody, you're going to have to go through the onboarding, not just the onboarding, but you're going to have to pay the taxes, the unemployment taxes, the payroll stuff, and perhaps guarantee them more hours, also maybe benefits, vacation time, that sort of thing it's kind of falling on you. But with outsourcing, you're, maybe a couple hours a week and off you go. That's
so
it.
Outsourcing is very attractive to small businesses, and especially home business solopreneurs, because like you say, it can be as little or as much as it needs to be. And if it's only 2 hours a week or 3 hours a week, that's available.
Exactly.
And what you mentioned earlier about this, how the hourly rate can be higher, but it's less expensive. And I think that goes into some of the tax advantages. Even though neither you nor I are accountants or lawyers, I think it's pretty much a no-brainer that not having to deal with all of that rigmarole from from Social Security and setting aside taxes and all of that, and benefits and all of that costs more in the end than it does just to pay somebody an hourly rate. And those are the tax advantages, and that it's very simple as compared to doing all that. Just getting something called a W-9 and a 1099, getting that lined up is actually very easy to do, much easier than dealing with the bureaucratic entanglements of taxes with the government.
Yes. Yeah. So basically you're paying me to take care of my own stuff, to take care of my own taxes and my own Social Security and all that other stuff. So yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. If you could give just one bit of advice to home business owners, what might that be?
That might be to know your worth. Know the value of the product or service that you provide. Chances are, if you are doing this full time, chances are you started out part time, or you were doing it kind of on the side, and before you started making a full go of it, it was part time. And so if people are paying you and you're making enough to do it full time, don't be afraid or embarrassed to ask for what you're worth. You are the expert in your industry, so charge for it.
Yeah, that's, I think, for newbies, one of the hardest things. And especially if the newbies are young people that are just getting to know what they think their worth might be. I think it becomes easier with experience, and I want to say with age, but I don't know if age has much to do with it. But other than age usually comes along with experience, one would hope. So then it becomes a little bit easier to assess what it is that you're worth and to ask that, which also brings me to the notion that we don't have to take everything that comes our way. If it doesn't feel right, we don't have to do it. And that includes
Hard one.
dealing with people who don't want to pay you what you say that you're worth.
Yes, that is definitely a hard one, and it's one that I'm still learning. Yeah, knowing that sometimes I'm not the best person for the job, that maybe somebody else could do it better, and to be able to let that go and know that somebody else is going to serve that client better, and perhaps they'll think better of you when you go, you know what, I think I can't do service to that.
There is that. I mean, it lends a lot to your professional credibility, more so to say, well, this is not my area of specialty, but I know somebody who can do it, than it would be to take on something that you're not prepared to handle and not do a good job of it. So that's important too.
Yeah, yeah.
I think as home business people, we have to balance that because we really want to do everything that we can that comes our way. And one of the secrets of the solopreneur is, of course, find out what your customers want and give them more of it, even if you have to learn how to do it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a fine line as far as my work is concerned, because sometimes it's a fun thing where I can learn a new skill. It's like, well, not that I may not have done it, but ooh, I could, sink my teeth into this one. And then there's the other ones like, I'm not sure that I'm gonna, even if I do learn it, I don't think I'll be as good as maybe somebody else could do. So yeah, definitely figuring out where the end of you is.
It's definitely a fine line. And along those lines, I had somebody once ask me to do a landing page for them, to write the landing page for them, and I did. And they were very happy with it. But they came to me a few weeks later and said, you ought to check out your competition in this town because I could get a landing page for half of what you charged me. And I said, well, that's great. All my blessings to you. Go out and get the landing pages for half of what I charged you. And, I said, I won't think any less of you for doing that because it's business. You don't take an ego thing and make hard feelings because somebody thinks they can get a better deal somewhere else. You just give them your blessings, or at least that's what I would do. Then another month or two went by and the person hired me again to do another landing page. And I didn't say, I felt like, but I didn't say, well, what happened to your half price person? They didn't give you good landing pages. So there is some real wisdom in your urging people to know their worth and learn how to ask for their worth. What would you like potential clients to know that maybe I haven't asked?
This is just not just for clients, but also for other home-based businesses to know is understand where your time is best spent. So there's two types of activities in any business. So there's the reason you're in business. It's the thing that you make and sell. It's the service you provide. Those are the things that earn you money. And then there's everything else that is required to keep the business running, but it doesn't actually earn you money, right? So there's the follow-up, there's the sales, there's the bookkeeping, there's all the things, as I like to say. And so outsource as much as you can so that you can then spend your time more wisely and more profitably doing those things that make you money.
That's really sage advice. Would you please share your phone number and your website and your email address so that our listeners can get in touch with you?
Absolutely. You can reach out to me at 828-545-3228. My website is moxieadmin.com. That's MOXIE. And my email is Kristen, KRISTEN, at moxieadmin.com.
Well, Kristen, thank you very much for being here. I really enjoyed the time that we spent together, and you've given me some food for thought about outsourcing. You're listening to WPVM LP Asheville 103.7, globally at WPVMFM.org and this is the Home Business Success Show. I'm your host, Hank Eder. My next guest, Barb McKenzie, owns Serenity Through Organizing. Barb spent over 30 years as a teacher, administrator, and tenured university professor. Using her teaching skills, she develops a tailor-made system for sorting, space planning, and time management for every client. Working with Barb helps clients reduce the feeling of being overwhelmed, gain a sense of control, reduce stress, and gain positive energy from their space. Barb enjoys creating spaces that allows her clients more time to relax in their homes. Her commitment to serving others and giving back are key hallmarks of her organizing business. Barb facilitates donations on behalf of her clients to Asheville Habitat Restore, Hearts with Hands, Our Voice, and the Mana Food Bank. Welcome to the show, Barb.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Well, if you would, please describe your business to our listeners.
I have a home organization business. It's called Serenity Through Organization, and I organize people's homes, attics, basements, garages, anything to help make their living space more enjoyable.
Very good. So that is both for homes and businesses, right?
I organize home businesses. I don't specialize in organizing brick and mortar businesses. Mine is specifically home organization and home office. So small business owners that are working from their homes.
Well, that's excellent because that just totally fits the picture of what this show is all about. You use the name Serenity Through Organization. What is the origin of that?
It's interesting because I started organizing as kind of a fun project while I was a university professor. I started doing this for friends, just for fun. And I had worked with one of my friends in her home for quite a few days. And we got finished with the space and she said, I love this space. I just feel so calm and peaceful and serene. And she said, I love serenity. And I went, that's it, Serenity Through Organization. So that's how that name got started.
That's great. And I can see how it's almost a Zen thing to me, hearing that Serenity Through Organization. I can see how having things more settled and organized around us can lend to a greater feeling of peace and harmony.
Absolutely. That's very true.
Well, have you always had the organizing bug?
I actually have. When I was growing up, I shared a room with my younger sister. And from when I was really small, we both had very clear ideas of how we wanted our side of the room to be. And I can remember at one point, it must have been one of the points when we were kids, when we weren't seeing quite eye to eye, we actually put masking tape down the center of our room to delineate, this is my side, this is her side. So I can remember that vividly, even now. So yes, I've always had just maybe a knack and also a desire for things to be organized and in their place. It's always made me feel better.
Yeah, there's those of us who really have to have everything in their place. I'm sort of a controlled chaos type, but I could see how even getting that under control, reining that in some, would actually be better for me. It's just that I've always kind of been that way. All right.
I think people find that once they work with an organizer, they find their space less chaotic and they find that their productivity goes up.
And I think that for home businesses, that would probably be a priority because productivity equals greater profit.
Absolutely.
What makes you a good organizer?
I'm a teacher by trade. I've been a teacher, an administrator, and a professor. And so my career was spent working with kids with disabilities. And I would teach my university students when they would go into a classroom to observe a student, actually talking to the teacher and visiting with other family members about what's working for this child, what are some areas of concern, both at school and at home. And then my students, through a process of assessment and observation, would make some recommendations for how this child might learn more successfully. So I really take my teaching skills and use those when I'm working with a client, because I'm going into the client's home, I'm listening to them tell me about what's working, what's not, I'm observing, and then I'm putting together strategies and systems in place so that they can feel better about their space and feel less stress. So teaching really has been a great and easy segue into organizing.
I would think that teaching is a good part of organizing too, because once you've set the systems in place, you probably have to show your clients how to use them.
Absolutely. That's exactly right. I have to show them how to use them, and then we have to work on changing behavior patterns, which takes some time, but it usually works out in a positive way.
This is a bit impromptu, but what are some ways that you work on changing behavior patterns?
One of the things that I do is make sure that not only the client, but if there are other family members, that everybody else is on board. So I'll give you an example. I had a client and she initially called me out to organize her kitchen. And we were taking things out of cabinets. And I said, do you mind if I just put some things on the floor here by your laundry room? And she said, no, that's fine. Just whatever you do, don't open the door. And I said, okay. And we eventually did open the door, but her laundry room was a drop point for the whole family. So when the kids would come in from school, they would drop their backpacks there. They would drop their sports equipment there. And it just became this massive holding area where people would just come home, drop things, and then close the door. It was difficult actually to get to the washer and dryer and do the laundry. So that was an example. Even though that I was there to help her with her kitchen, it turned out that actually helping her with the laundry room solved a lot of problems. All we had to teach the other members of the family, especially the kids, to do is walk just a few feet around the corner to the entryway, where we put hooks on the wall and some baskets for each of their things. And the problem of the laundry room was solved, but each child had to be responsible. They knew where their hook was, they knew where their basket was for their things. And so that's new learning that had to take place. And if one of them forgot, they were reminded, this is what you do. You walk around the corner and there's your spot. Didn't cost any money. It's just a matter of changing a behavior pattern.
So then by not even addressing the laundry room per se, you addressed another area and other ways of behavior, then the problem in the laundry room basically solved itself because things weren't being dropped in there. It reminds me of the old Zen statement, I do nothing, yet nothing remains undone.
It was kind of a bonus. She goes, gee, I thought we were going to organize my kitchen. But we also organized the laundry room. That worked out well.
That's awesome. Well, would you please tell me, how is your organizing different than what we see on HGTV?
Oh gosh. Well, I would say I wish that I could wave a magic wand and have everything be organized beautifully in 30 minutes. That's not possible. I'm a big proponent of repurposing and reusing items that the client already has. So I would say that I differ from the HGTV shows because I really like to reuse. Clients will typically say, shall I go out and buy plastic tubs and containers? And I really discourage that for several reasons. One, I don't like them to buy anything unless it's absolutely necessary, because 9 times out of 10, we can reuse a space or reuse something they already have that can serve that purpose. So I would say that is how I differ greatly. I really don't expect clients to go out and buy things to get organized.
Okay. Well, who then is your ideal client?
My ideal client would be someone that has already made the decision that they want help. Sometimes people feel that they may want help, but perhaps they're not totally committed. So I need to make sure that they're really ready to make a change and they're really ready to accept some guidance and some help. And that's one thing that I do when I meet with a client for the initial consultation.
Okay. For home businesses, organizing is another level of home organization. It's just, I guess it's the same thing, but in a slightly different way for a different purpose. What are some of the organizational needs of home businesses?
One of the biggest organizational needs I feel like that is so important is to have systems in place. Paper and managing paper documents can really be a time waster. And I don't know if you may be familiar with a research company called Gartner. They've been around since the 70s. And this research firm has some really startling statistics about productivity in the workplace. And one of the things that Gartner has stated is that the average professional spends 18 minutes searching for a piece of paper, searching for a document. So when you think about it, that's a tremendous time waster. You're searching for a piece of paper, which means you're not being productive, which means your revenue is not possibly where you want it. So I would say one of the biggest important things that someone that is working from home can do is to have systems put in place. If you're using paper, have a system, have color-coded files. Also, it's really important for people working from home to have electronic records management. Another very well-known statistic is that even though people have electronic files, they still waste time searching for a certain electronic document, searching through emails because they haven't organized their emails or categorized them. So that would be my biggest piece of advice, is to have systems in place, because systems are going to save you time, which is going to save you money.
So then you would actually help your clients set up a hierarchical file structure for their electronic records, just as if you were helping them set up a filing cabinet.
Absolutely.
Very good.
Absolutely.
You're listening to WPVM LP Asheville 103.7, globally at WPVMFM.org. And this is the Home Business Success Show. I'm your host, Hank Eder. My guest in this segment is Barb McKenzie. Barb, I would think each project is different. Do you come in and look at the space? Is that what you're calling your initial consultation?
Yes. So my initial consultation is free. I don't charge for that. The first thing I do is I send a potential client a questionnaire, and they complete the questionnaire. They can email it back to me, or we can just go over it when I meet them in person. But I do go into their home. I don't charge for this. And we sit and we talk about, we go over the questionnaire, which goes into what do they need help with, what do they need help organizing, what would they like to accomplish, what's working, what isn't working, do they have any budgetary or time constraints. It's really important that I spend time in someone's home and meet them personally to get an idea of the size and the scope of the project. It may be that I need to call in one of my handymen, and most of them are booked, days to weeks out. So those things are really important for me to scope out what a project is going to take. So that's what I like to do. I like to meet people in their homes.
Very good. And has that been affected by the COVID-19 crisis?
It has. When we were in lockdown, of course, everything pretty much stopped until in this state, we started getting permission through the different phases, to, I guess, unlock, so to speak. But we still, because of COVID, we go in with masks and gloves. So, and I want to make sure that the clients know that we feel very comfortable working in masks and gloves. And we would also, want them to be comfortable having us coming into their home. So if they also want to have masks, that's great too. But we do that as just a safety precaution.
That's certainly a good common sense safety precaution. Well, what happens if spouses or partners are not on board with the need to hire a professional organizer?
I think that if everyone in the family is not on board, then I may not be a good fit for that client. 9 times out of 10, the space is going to change in the way that it feels when you walk in the way that you use certain items in that space. Just like the woman that I was to organize her kitchen, and we ended up organizing the laundry room. So each of the 3 children had to be on board with what to do with their backpacks and their sports equipment. And if they weren't in agreement, then it really wasn't going to be successful. So the way that I run my business is that everybody in the household needs to be on board and has to agree that it's time for a change.
All right, so that brings me to something that's kind of an issue that I've dealt with a number of times. We talked about on this show before that you really don't have to take everything that comes your way, and some projects are more ideal than others. So sometimes it's our prerogative to have to say no.
Yes. Yes.
Well, does your client need to be there when you are organizing?
Yes. I need to work alongside the client. Believe it or not, organizing it's it can be hard work physically, and it can be quite emotional for clients when we're considering decluttering, repurposing, reusing certain items. An example I'll give you is I had a client that had saved every trophy, ribbon from field day, art contest project that her child had had from elementary school through high school. But this young adult was grown up and she'd saved it all. And she didn't know what to do with it. And so what we ended up doing was I ended up photographing all of it and scanning it, and then made basically a slideshow and put it on her computer so she could see those images and see those memories every time she went to her computer. But she really didn't need the object. It was the memory she was tied to, not the 6th grade field day ribbon. It was the memory of 6th grade field day.
That sure makes sense. And by getting rid of the objects, I'm sure you freed up a lot of space.
Absolutely. And the adult, the child that was now an adult, was totally fine with it. So there's a lot of emotion that goes into it.
I imagine there is. I don't know if this question has an easy answer because every project is different, but how long does organizing usually take?
That's a great question. Again, I don't do it in 30 minutes like on HGTV. What I found is I work with a client in a 4-hour time block. So for example, if someone calls me in to organize a kitchen pantry, we may be able to complete that in 4 hours versus someone that calls me in to organize an attic and a garage. I work in 4-hour time periods, but a garage and an attic would take several days, a week longer, depending on the scope and size of the attic and the garage. So I found that most clients work with me in that 4-hour time block. And after 4 hours, I find that people are ready for a break and they're ready to come back then another day and start again. So that works out best for me, but it just depends on the size and the scope of the project as far as how long it takes.
That certainly makes sense. And what about projects that go a little bit beyond, that require a handyman or perhaps putting things out for consignment or even document shredding?
Yes, I'm blessed in that I have 3 handymen that I have used on a regular basis. And I think, especially now with COVID, I want to make sure that whoever I recommend to a client, that I am comfortable having those people in my home. I would never recommend a client someone that I'm not comfortable having in my home. So I have wonderful handymen that I call, and I also have another person that I work with for consignment, all types of household good consignment. And then document shredding, again, depending on how much that a client has, I will do that myself. I will bag it and I will take it to secure shredding, and I will do that work myself. If it's, hundreds and hundreds of pounds of shredding, that would be a situation where I would need to call a company and ask them to do mobile shredding on the spot, because it wouldn't be feasible for me to try to bag it and take it to secure shredding. So, but I have resources for all of those things.
Right. And I remember at the beginning when I was reading the introduction that you work with several of these places, Asheville Habitat Restore, Hearts with Hands, Our Voice. Do you find that some of the things that you take out of organizing projects sometimes go to these places?
Yes. Again, repurposing, reusing, and sometimes I will go with a client, and that's another service I provide. They don't have to go with me, but I take all of the items to where they're best suited, whether it's Asheville Habitat Restore, or whether it's another nonprofit. But many times I can go to those nonprofits and find something for that client's space. So it's kind of a win-win. Although that client may not need that object, I can donate it to a nonprofit, and when I'm donating, I may find something that would work in her space or his space. So I think it works out well. It's just giving back.
And it's always good to give back. What would you say is the biggest mistake people make when they set up home offices?
Truly, I think the biggest mistake is not making the home office off limits to their children and their spouses and or partners. Many times people that work from home during a certain time of the day, and then it's not unusual for kids to come in and want to work on the computer, or a spouse or a partner to come in and want to work on the computer. And when you have different people in a space that are using the space in a different way than the home business owner, that's when there can be real issues. So I always encourage people working from home, make the space off limits.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And I would even want to go a step further and say that the computer that the person uses for the home business should be the home business computer, and not be something that the kids and spouses or, aunts and uncles or whoever can use, because there runs the risk of catastrophic crashes or data being erased, or just it's not worth the headache. So the kids and the spouse probably need to have their own computer.
Absolutely. Yes.
Maybe a home family computer and a business computer.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
What one bit of advice would you give to home businesses?
Gosh, I guess, again, I would say have systems in place. And if you are using paper can be a security risk. Make sure you have a good filing system for your paper. You don't want, paper documents to be misled or misfiled. So having a system is really important. And also make sure you have an electronic records management system. So again, you need systems, because although it may seem kind of like a pain to put a system in place, in the long run, it's going to save you time and it's going to save you money.
Yes, and once that system is in place and you get used to using it, from there it becomes smooth sailing.
Hopefully, yes.
Hopefully. Well, if you would, please share your phone number and your email address and even your website so our listeners can check those out.
Yes, the website is Serenity Through Organization.com. They can email me at Barb, B-A-R-B, at serenitythrough-organization.com. And that is really the best way to get a hold of me. So, and they can submit a request for a consultation right on the website.
That's great. Well, Barb, I've really enjoyed our conversation, and thank you for coming here and being a part of our show today.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.